Hi, I'm Kelly Secret, and I live at the Howard House for 3 years.
The Howard House building that was built as a restaurant, hotel, and then it was added on. It was only a 3-story building back then, and you can actually see the 3-story in the stone. It's a little different color in the front of the building, and they've added 2 floors to the top.
It's a beautiful building, and there's multiple tenants here, so we all often experience some of the same things. And one of which is what we've dubbed the polite ghost. So you'll be walking into the building or to your front door, and there are things, your hands are full, and magically the door opens for you. And the ghost, it isn't just for one person. The ghost actually does it for many of the residents. However, it seems to be particularly fond of the ladies. So chivalry must live in the ever after.
I have heard stories. In fact, one of my former tenants was here about 4 years, and she moved to St. Louis, and she's, I could tell you stories about the one time I was down here getting groceries out of my car, and I looked back to my window on the 4th floor, and there was a man in my window holding my cat. So I went and ran into the unit and went back into the house, and the cat was outside of the room door, and the door was shut, and nobody was in my building.
There is a ghost that would play with my cat, or all my cats. And all 4 of them would chase things across the apartment, and you get up and go look to see, oh, do they have a bug? No, there's nothing there. And it happened the entire time that I was living here. Something was playing with the cats. But then there'd be the evenings where you're sitting on the sofa, you're chilling, you're watching TV, and all of a sudden there are 4 cats staring at a point directly above your head. And they would just sit and look. And there were multiple times I would say, you can hang out, it's good, because really these ghosts are our neighbors. They're kind of like the roommates or the Aunt Sally who comes to visit at Thanksgiving and doesn't really leave. You make room for them and you make allowances for them. But the one allowance I could not make was having something hovering over my head. And the cats would track it along the wall. So you would ask it to move, and it might move over a foot or 2. And now they're staring at the point, 12 inches to the left. The first day I moved into the Howard House, my furniture wasn't here yet. I'm sitting there on my folding table, and I hear a whole bunch of commotion outside. I get up, I look out the window across the street, and there's a ghost tour. And the person leading the ghost tour has their back to the building. And of course, all the people who are on the tour are looking at the building, and he's pointing up at my window. Now this apartment had been empty for a little while before I moved in. So I look into the window, 25 people go, and I go, So I started to do a little bit of research and had found out that the pet name for the ghost in this apartment was called Dennis, and that Dennis had a cat. So I think it's Dennis and his cat that would play with our cats. But Dennis sometimes got a little frisky. Mirrors? If it wasn't a bathroom mirror screwed into the wall, it would break. I had a framed mirror hanging on the wall one afternoon, and I hear shatter. And the mirror part had slipped off the back of the frame. The clips were still in place, like it should have been holding the mirror. Every time I hung a mirror, it would fall off the wall and break. So eventually I just stopped hanging mirrors because somebody didn't like their reflection. The laundry room, before it was rehabbed, was one of the most oppressing places that I've ever experienced. I would literally take my basket of clothes, run in, throw everything in the machine, turn it on, right back out again. It would feel like you would walk in there and it was like something was surrounding you and crushing you, like an elephant on your chest. It feels like something or somebody's watching you, and not in a good way. And I would talk to it and ask it to please leave me alone, and it would just hover.
We were having problems with the drain on the wash machine overflowing, so I had my stepson take the floor up, and he calls me. He said, "Ron, do you know there's a hidden room underneath of this floor?" So we went into the gift shop down on the 1st floor and went to the back of her room, and there was a block wall that had been built during the 80s, and there was a plug, wooden plug, and we pulled the plug out, and that's where the hidden room. We walked in, and here's a door that goes up into this room, and then there's another opening. I have no idea what it was for, what it was used for.
It felt dangerous, and that's the only spot in all of Howard House that anything ever felt dangerous to me. And in the evenings before bed, every single night for 10 to 15 minutes, I had a big old black cat named Ziggy who would sit in the hallway leading into the bedroom and have a conversation with something every single night. And we used to joke around and say, oh, he's telling the ghost about his day. You know, there are good roommates and there are bad roommates, and they were definitely good roommates.